Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Pursuit Podcast. Jesse Slaughter here. And tonight's guest is Shane Klippenes. Shane, a 20-year retired fireman, decided that he was going to move out of the county when he retired, have a farm, have some sheep, have some cows, and then go to work for the Great Falls Police Department as a police officer, starting over as a rookie and another way to serve our community. And he's probably going to do another 20 years because if you see the guy, he's got tons of energy. He's got tons of ambition. He's in great shape. He's ready to go. So super exciting. That's all great. But what I'm most interested in, what you'll be, is the man of faith and the family man. He has a deep, deep admiration for his family and love for them, love for his farm, and love for this community. And that all comes out in this amazing interview. This is a lifelong public servant, and we're super excited to have him on. Stand by.
9-foot pursuit. Stop! Stop!
Hi, Shane.
Hey, Jesse.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you on. This has been a long time coming.
It has.
Yeah, we started talking about this a while back, didn't we?
We did. Yeah, and crud, we've known each other forever.
I know. It's been awesome. For what? Gosh, we're going on over 20 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah, so you were a young rookie fireman, and I was a young rookie cop, and we went through Great Falls City orientation.
Yes, we did.
What was
it was a riot.
Oh, we screwed off the
whole
entire time.
2 full days.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then was it Debbie Reynolds? Was she the HR
director
or whatever? Yeah, she was a super cool lady too, because she had a very good sense of humor.
Yeah, she made me laugh, and it was cool because she put up with our stuff.
Oh, we were so bad. And then
Noah Scott was there.
Scott, yes.
Jason Baker.
Oh, Jason Baker was in that? I totally forgot about that. That's right.
It was brutal. Yeah.
Oh, we were terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, we were beyond inappropriate a couple of times.
Shocking.
And I can imagine as HR, they were like, why do we hire these people?
Why are we paying these guys overtime to come tour other city departments?
I know.
Yeah. Good times.
And it was actually, I remember I was dreading it so bad. I was like, why do I have to go to this? Because if you were like me, you'd been on a little while before you had to go.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I think I'd been on like a year or year and a half.
Yeah, I think I too.
And then they mandated it. And it was like, well, this was supposed to happen in the first month of your, since you've been hired, but we didn't get to you. So now you get to go.
I learned a ton though.
I did too.
I learned a ton. Just like anything, you think you know something and then you go and you're like, oh.
Apparently I don't.
But we had fun. That was super fun. They bust us around.
Yep. Yeah. Bust us around all the different departments. Yeah. And it's like it was almost like being on like a basketball team bus in high school or something.
Right.
Yeah. You put me, you, Noah Scott, and Jason Baker together. And
well, we were that immature.
Yes.
That we just screwed off the entire time.
Fast forward 22 years and here we are.
There's something I did during that's so horrifically inappropriate that I won't say it. But I remember
I bet you will.
I remember that Debbie Reynolds caught us. It was Noah and I, and she caught us in the act of doing something terribly inappropriate. And she like looks at us, and we start laughing, and she just laughed, and she just rolled with it. Thank God.
Right?
Yeah, because I probably probably shouldn't be here because of it. So anyway, moving on.
That's a heck of a way to start.
It was, and it was all in good fun. But when you're looking at the HR director and you do something inappropriate like that and you get busted, you're like, this is bad.
Right.
So anyway, but I've always said I've been an HR nightmare my whole career. So
indeed,
that's how I roll. So, Shane Klippenes, you've had quite the interesting life. First of all, there's a lot of titles, and I think on our title here we have you as a police officer and a retired fireman. I've always known you as a man of God, first and foremost. That's how I've kind of known you, and you're really, really, a dedicated follower of Christ. Give me the 10-minute overview. Where were you born? What was your upbringing? What's your childhood like? And let's go from there.
All right. No, I was born in Beaufort, South Carolina, on a Marine Corps base. My dad was a Marine getting ready to head to Vietnam, and just prior to him deploying, they found out an interesting sequence of events. First, they found out that my mom was pregnant with me, and then they found out that she also had liver disease. So my dad, despite his Marine Corps training and hoo-ha and ready to go and wanting to deploy and go to Vietnam, got medically honorably discharged from the Marines to stay home and take care of my mom. So anyway, long story short, it was, obviously I wasn't coherent for any of that because I'm in the womb the whole time. But no, she had a bunch of friends from church pray for her, and her liver disease was cured. I was born healthy with no brain damage. And
well, that's now subject to recall after that statement.
So, and then my dad worked a series of jobs growing up, and one of the things he did was worked at John Deere at the foundry in Waterloo, Iowa. And
wow.
So we lived back there. And I remember one day my dad came to our family, and we were Baptist, and we were speaking for myself, it was like a religious thing more than a relationship thing, for sure. I big air quotes, accepted Christ, became a believer when I was like 5 years old at a Bible club. And so I had lots of head knowledge about what being a believer in God was. And I remember probably first grade, my dad came to us and said, "Hey, God's called me to be a pastor." And it's like, okay, well, what's that? What's all that about? You know? And so we gathered up in our kitchen, and my dad's like, "Hey, we're gonna pray about this because I don't know how to be a pastor. I mean, I'm gonna have to go to Bible college. I mean, I don't know how any of this is gonna work. We don't have the money to make any of this work, but I really feel God's calling on my life to do this." So we gathered up, and we're holding hands, and we're praying as best as we know how about this calling that my dad says that he has on his life to be a pastor. And during that time, the phone starts ringing, and this was way before voicemail. We didn't have an answering machine, so the phone just rings and rings and rings. And my dad's finally like, "All right, I got to get the phone." He goes and answers the phone, and it's a very shirt-tail relative of ours who I don't know that we'd ever even met, who was a man of God, and just said, he talks to my dad. He said, "Hey, Don, I've got this prompting that," he goes, "I feel like you're supposed to be a pastor. Have you ever thought about doing that?" And my dad's like, "Hey, we're gathered up right now praying about that. We're just not sure how we're going to make it work. We don't know any of the particulars." And this guy was very direct. He's like, how in the world are you going to pay for that, Don? And he's like, "These are all things that we're praying about." And he said, he goes, "Why don't you draw up a budget, find out what it's going to cost?" So there was a Bible school, I think it's Ankeny Baptist Bible College, relatively close to where we lived. And my dad penciled it all out, figured it out, sent the numbers off to this guy and said, "This is what it's going to cost." And this guy is like, "No, it's going to cost a little bit more than that. And you need to budget in entertainment for your family while you're doing this," because we weren't any poor, but we were like powdered milk people, and
Right.
super long story short, this man wrote a check for my dad's tuition for all 4 years. My dad worked during that time. He worked part-time, went to school full-time for 4 years. And then after that, we moved out to Portland, Oregon, so he could get his Master's of Divinity in Portland. Knocked that out, and then my freshman year in high school, I went from Gresham, Oregon, which is just it's a big town that butts right up to Portland. My dad got a job as a pastor in a town of 580 people, and so we moved to this middle of nowhere place where we didn't know anybody. And
Where's this at?
It's called Scio. It's between Salem and Albany in Oregon in the Willamette Valley. And so we moved down there. God blessed my dad's efforts. The church boomed. It was amazing to witness. But again, throughout this whole time, I'm basically a pretty religious. I'm a pretty religious person, follower. I was a Christian kind of in name only. I mean, I'd do the stuff because that's all I knew to do.
Right.
And where things got rough and where I actually had to look at, like, is this a religion or is this a relationship? Was when I was a junior, between my junior and senior year in college, without going into too many details, I get a phone call from my dad and it just said, "Hey, look, here's the deal. You're probably going to hear that I've had an affair." And he said, "And it's true." So it was interesting because it changed everything. I mean, our family disintegrated, and it really made me go, okay. At the time, I was planning to be a youth pastor, and that's what I was going to school for, and everything else. And it shifted my focus. And so it was a crazy event that I wouldn't wish on anyone, but it really drove me to be like, okay, I've been religious my whole life. Okay. I got to figure out what this relationship with God thing is like, and how is that going to color my life? Because, I mean, I saw religion just blow up in my face.
Right.
And I realized that so many of the people that I hung out with that were religious, but didn't really have a relationship, that I didn't want to be like them. And, so it was a catalyst to, become something different. And, now 20 some odd years later, I mean, I have a fantastic relationship with my dad. I have a fantastic relationship with my mom. I mean, it wasn't always like that, but it was cool that.
So are they divorced?
Yep.
Are they? Okay.
Yep. They've been, they divorced right in the aftermath, and they've been divorced. Right. They've stayed that way. So, but anyway, it was a launching point towards figuring out, hey, look, what are you going to do with this? Okay. And so, as with many things, we talk about the pendulum swinging, like, hey, I'm all the way over here. I'm super religious and I'm perfect. Okay. And then the pendulum swings way to the other side where I'm like, hey, I'm going to rely on grace. I mean, I'm just going to be me, and whatever happens, happens. So now at age 50, the pendulum hasn't hit center. I'm still one of those people that really has a hard time with religion. But I work on my relationship with God. I don't do him service most days. I mean, most days, like, it is the core thread that the rest of my life is built around. But right. I feel like, I know that every day I could do better than what I do. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's fair to say that, well, it doesn't matter. I know I could do better, but I'm also an open book. Like, if people ask me questions, I'm like, oh man, I maybe did a couple things right today. But I also know that I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have talked like that. I mean, I swear all the time, and it's something that
you're a Montana Christian,
right? Yeah,
you drink and you swear.
There you go. Yeah, so there you go. I don't even have to out myself. I didn't know there was a term for it.
Yeah. It's actually Ben's here today running our switchboard, but Tim Lee, who usually runs it, it's actually his quote. Give all the credit to him on that.
Yep. No, I'm all in on that.
Yeah.
That's a T-shirt.
It is.
Yeah. So anyway,
we should make that.
Yeah, we should. So anyway, that's sort of the broad sketch. And in the middle of that, right at the very tail end of that story, is where I met my wife. Met my wife Quenby back in Minnesota, and we had one of those relationships where we'd seen each other around before.
So before you get into Quenby, because that's going to be a story. That's going to be a story.
Yep.
Let's go back real quick. I appreciate you sharing that, but I'm curious. Like, you talked a lot about spirituality. What are you doing during your childhood? Are you into sports? What drove you? Because I mean, like, as a young man, something has to drive you, or you're going to be a convict, because that's how we're geared.
For sure. Okay, so when I was little, so right now I'm 6'2.5", 210. Okay, when I was little, I was just a little a twig. When I graduated high school, I was 6 feet tall, 145 pounds. So I was a skinny dork. Okay. And I had big glasses and bad hair, and I didn't get any of that figured out till like as a sophomore in high school. Okay. Right. But, I played sports. I played baseball. I played basketball all through high school. One of the cool things about where I grew up is that a varsity sport was logging sports. When you watch like ESPN, the steel, so
that stuff's awesome.
Yeah, no, so it was one of the things that drove me was a desire to be known as a hard worker. Okay, my grandpa. One of the things I didn't know when I was little is that he had 2 full-time jobs. So when we would go visit them, he would come home from a job and he would come in and lay down on the floor, and I would go play with him and talk to him. And what I didn't realize is that was his nap time. And he had one of those old black metal lunch boxes and a Stanley thermos, and he would come in and put it on the counter. Grandma would reload both of them while he's having nap time, while I'm bugging him and playing with him. She would refill the thermos, refill the lunchbox, and after a short break, he'd get up and leave for his other 8-hour job.
Wow.
And he worked in a taconite mine and as a railroad guy. Okay.
Wow.
So I'm like, and then my dad was also a hard worker. My uncle, all the men I respected worked hard. Right. So I'm like, that's what I want to be known as. So it's kind of weird, but as a young man, I'm like, I want to be known as a hard worker. I remember when my mom dropped me off in the strawberry fields when I was, I don't know, I'll probably get it wrong, but it seemed like I was 10 or 12, whatever. I mean, that ballpark. She took me to the strawberry field, and they were, they had a Mexican foreman and all Mexican workers. And this guy owns the strawberry field, and she drops me off and said, my son's here to work. And he said, nope, he can't stay. And she said, why's that? And he said, white kids won't stay and work. He said they'll pick for a little bit. You've left them, and then they just screw off, and it's daycare all day. And she said, no, he will work. And so that started a long history of me working in the fields in Oregon. And I picked berries with those guys. We'd pick zucchini together. I ended up driving tractor and being a supervisor. And anyway, so working hard drove me. So I was able to invest my freshman year in the forestry program. So something that I'd never done before. These people taught me how to set chokers. They taught me how to do Jack and Jill double bucking, where you've got, a guy on one side of the big crosscut saw and a gal on the other, and you're cutting logs. Got me doing spar pole climbing, where you're running up and down the tree. And I wasn't particularly good at any of it, but I really enjoyed it. And I tried super hard. And our high school was unique because they would, forestry and FFA were both science credits. Nice. So I was heavily involved in all of that, and welding, and I did all of that all 4 years. And it was fun because it really drove me. I'm like, man, someday, and I started raising sheep as an FFA project. And one of the cool things was that I started off with, I started off with 1 lamb and a ewe. No clue what I was doing, right? And I had a guy showing me how to do it. And then the next year, I lambed out his flock. He brought 125 ewes over, and I lambed them out on contract. He just left them at my place, and I lambed them all out, and I got 10% of the lamb crop in payment. And then the following year, I bought him out. So then I ran that through high school, and then when I graduated high school, I asked my dad, I'm like, hey, would you lamb while I'm in college? And he's like, nope. So I sold out. And then it's been a cool opportunity having knowledge of how to do sheep producing. So that over the years, as Quimby and I've had kids, and we didn't have a place to raise sheep, but we knew other people that did. So we plowed into helping big time ranchers with a skill that I had, and taught it to my kids, and they've learned the value of hard work and ranching and everything else. And now, however many zillion years later, I've got my own little tiny place, and my wife and I are right back at it. So it's interesting. Hard work and rural stuff is really what made my heart come alive as a young man and drove me in a positive direction.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you were that was back in the day in Oregon, when Oregon lived on logging and agriculture.
Absolutely.
You know, and it still does today. They just don't talk about it in the media.
Right. Well, and I firmly remember the whole spotted owl controversy. I'm aging myself here, but when the spotted owl controversy started, I mean, that's when a bunch of the science went out the window in logging, and emotion took over. So
Absolutely. So you said a couple interesting things in there. So you actually competed in like the logging games where you'd like chop wood under time and stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, and our team was good. We won state.
Wow.
I wasn't that great. I just, like I said, I just tried hard. I mean, I've got a photo of our logging team. It is so funny. Looking back on it, you know. But
so these guys were all like sophomores in high school with full beards.
Oh yeah, no, seriously. So everybody was trying hard. You know, this was the days of really sparse facial hair and mullets.
Mullets.
No,
yes.
I never grew one, but man,
So
some of the people that I was
you're
with
probably
were
what, a
solid.
1992 high school graduate?
91.
91. So that's close.
So you're close.
That's close. Yeah. So that's to grow up at that time in America. For all the people out there watching right now, you don't understand.
No.
Growing up, I was a 95 graduate.
Okay.
Growing up in the 90s in America.
In a small town.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I grew up in a town, 22,000, so not much bigger.
Right. 580, you're a little bigger.
Yeah, a little bigger. Just a little. But it still had the small town feel.
Right.
It's now called Los Angeles, so a totally different place. But you can't, it was everything that the American dream is.
Yeah, it was. So we lived. I forget. I'm just going to make this up. Say I lived 4 or 5 miles away from high school. Okay, they had days, and I'm not painting this as though we did this all the time, but a couple days a year, a bunch of us would ride our horses to school.
Yeah,
and there was a corral out behind the school, and I could just drop off this hillside, ride across a big open field, and eventually get to school, throw a horse in there. And it was for show. I mean, everybody they're just like, hey, let's ride our horses for fun. But you could do it, and you walk out in the parking lot, and almost every pickup has 2 rifles or 2 guns in the back window.
Yep.
A shotgun and a 22.
Yeah.
Everybody had one. Yep. Nobody misbehaved with them.
No.
I mean,
and people left their windows rolled down, and they just sat there.
Yep. Yeah. And one of the other things that made me laugh back then is occasionally when the guy got himself a good girlfriend, her name would go on the passenger door under the window.
And remember, they all had bench seats, and she sat
right in
next
the middle,
to you.
right?
Yeah. That was awesome. No, it's totally true though. It was a great time to grow up in America. It was a wonderful time.
Yeah, it was for sure.
There was a lot of innocence still left, which
Yeah.
was amazing. So, what during this whole time? I mean, because you go on and you become a career fireman and now a law enforcement officer, and you call it a little farm, but you've got a little homestead.
Right.
You've got a little ranch. You got a little slice of heaven. You have the Montana dream.
Right. We're trying hard.
You do. You have it. You're not trying. You're living it. So what do you think shaped you the most? I mean, your dad's infidelity had a huge, powerful influence on you.
Yep.
And wow, I can't even imagine. And then what you talked about some, and I'll address this. You talked about some great men who are super hardworking Americans.
Yep.
I love the story of your grandfather.
Yep.
Like, you know what's amazing about that is that when you get to the age where you're old enough to be a grandfather, which you are.
Yep. Times 4.
And I'm old enough, but it just hasn't occurred yet. But I have an adopted 3-year-old, so
yeah,
I'm
you're
living it a little bit vicariously.
Yep.
Your appreciation for your children goes through the roof. You realize how much you missed when they were little, because your career, you were building a marriage, you were building your home, you were working so hard. And I think about your grandfather, and I just want to touch on this for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he cared about the sleep. I think he knew that was the moment that he had to live in.
Right.
And that's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's so amazing.
Yep. And what's weird is that how long it takes as someone who defines themselves, and I think that's one of the things I've had to be careful of, and I've screwed up on, is I've allowed certain things that I do in my life to create an identity.
Right.
Okay. I was a business owner. So for like 5 years, my father-in-law and I worked together, had a very successful business. Okay. And at the time, my identity was I'm a business owner.
Right.
One of the interesting things was, so I'm in my early 20s, mid 20s. Okay. I have a successful business, new marriage, kids hitting the ground on a relatively consistent basis, and built a freaking huge custom home in the mountains that borders national forest at age 27, but I was miserable. And I'm like, and I wasn't a very good dad, wasn't a very good husband. I mean, always working. And I'm like, I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, why am I such an asshole? And my dad sent me a book called Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. And my Uncle Jeff is if you want to get into something, man, he's a mentor. Okay. My Uncle Jeff had given it to my dad. My dad sends it to me. I read it. Anyway, to summarize, basically, John Eldredge, the author, talks about how as Christian men, or as men at all, okay, God has hardwired us to do certain things, okay? And if we're operating outside of what God's hardwired us to do, then we're not operating in the right bandwidth, okay? So I had a really successful business with my father-in-law, okay? And financially, we were doing great, but I wasn't operating within what I was hardwired by God to do, okay? So I was miserable. So I read the book, and I like show it to my wife, and I go, I figured out why I'm such a jerk. And one of the things that they talk about is basically figuring out what you're hardwired to do.
Right.
Okay. So during that time, where I'm at church, I've got a fussy kid. I go downstairs to the nursery. I meet another guy in there who's down there with his fussy kid, and I'm like, hey, what do you do? And he said, I'm a firefighter for Hell on a Fire. And I'm like, and this light bulb clicks on in my head, where I'm like, that's what I should do. And it was just like spontaneous, instantaneous, super clear. And then I remembered that, hey, that hardworking grandpa of mine also was a career volunteer firefighter, which just means he's a volunteer firefighter for 20 or 30 years and got a small retirement out of it.
Right.
Okay. So, and then I remembered seeing plaques for crazy stuff that he'd done as a volunteer that he never talked about up on his wall. And then I remembered my high school basketball coach, Mike Traeger. He was a volunteer firefighter. And when he got hired by Gresham Fire, it was a big deal. The whole town came out. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. And so I looked into it, and becoming a firefighter, all the research I did said once you're fully qualified to get hired, the national average is 5 to 7 years of testing and applying before you get hired. And this was in January. So this guy that I met down in the nursery said, hey, there's this thing called the Montana Firefighters Testing Consortium where you can test to be a firefighter for all the departments in the state. He goes, but I think it closes this week. He said, call Deb Reynolds up in Great Falls. And I'm like, okay. So I called her the next day, and she's like, yeah, yep, it's this week, but you have to have all your stuff in by, I think, Wednesday. And she said, and you have to be an EMT. Are you an EMT? And I'm like, no. I said, how do you become an EMT? And she goes, call the College of Technology in your area. She goes, you can apply without being an EMT, but you have to be an EMT before you get hired. So she didn't cut any corners, but she let me fax all the information to her, right, and then followed up with a hard copy. Right. So I call Helena Votech. I call them. I'm like, hey, do you have any EMT classes? And they're like, yeah, we have one that starts on Thursday, but it's full. And I'm like, gosh dang it, I really need to get in an EMT class. And she's like, all right. She's like, all right, hang on just a second. Hold, please. Puts me on hold for like 10 minutes. Comes back. She goes, hey, the person that just called in was dropping. And so we have an opening. Do you want it? I'm like, okay. So I recognize that now as that's a God thing. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I jump into the EMT class. I join Clancy Volunteer Fire Department. I start checking all the boxes, right? It takes 6 months to get out of the EMT class. And then I saw that the Montana State Fire Service Training School was doing a 10-day Firefighter 1 class up in Great Falls. And I don't even know if I'd ever even been to Great Falls. And I'm like, I got to figure out how to afford that. And I ended up in Great Falls. I treated that 10 days like a tryout for the job. I'm like, I'm going to bust my butt, right? Because the two head trainers were captains, Jeff and Jamie Jackson at Great Falls Fire, both of whom later retired as battalion chiefs. And at the end of the week, Jeff Jackson, my coach, is like, hey, you ever thought about putting in for Great Falls? And I'm like, that'd be great, but the application deadline already closed. And he's like, no, I'm pretty sure you can still apply. I'll give you a letter of recommendation. And so he gave me a letter of recommendation, and it was old school. He put it in an envelope, addressed it to HR, sealed it, and signed his name across the seal. So I have no idea what the letter said. I started, my journey started with an aha moment in January. Wow. I wasn't qualified to even really apply until July, August. And I'd moved to Great Falls and started a career as a firefighter on December 3rd of 2001. It was, wow. Yeah, it was, the steps were, I did the work. I busted my butt. Yeah, but the steps were orchestrated by God.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, that's how I ended up.
Everything good like that, he takes care of.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything good. So let's go back real quick. Quimby, we kind of leapt off, but you gave a bunch of really cool background. So
right.
Talk to me real quick about how you meet Quimby and how the whole thing goes.
Okay. So we'd seen each other around a little bit, but we hadn't.
So where is this? So let's set the stage.
I'm in Roseville, Minnesota at Northwestern College.
Okay? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're both paying way too much money to go to a school that we aren't very much attending. To the point where both of us had separate meetings with the dean of students who suggested that our time and money might be spent better someplace else. So anyway, we'd seen each other around, but we officially met one night at a volleyball game. We're sitting there, and she's sitting in front of me, and I'm like, man, that chick is a smoke show, you know? And I like tap on her, and she turns around, and she goes, hi, Shane. And I'm like, what? And both of us had been in weird relationships in the past, and so we weren't like willing to admit that we were a thing, you know. So, but we dated. We went and did something every night. That was in September. We went and did something every night through Thanksgiving, but we're not a thing, man. We couldn't admit that.
In denial.
Right? Oh yeah. And then we had to be apart for Thanksgiving, and we were apart for like a day or a day and a half, and it was like the world had ended. And so we admitted we were a thing, and then got engaged in February, married in July. So we got married before we'd known each other a year, and wow. It's been a little over 27 years now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
That's awesome. My wife and I got married after like 2 months, so
right.
I can relate.
Yeah, you know the deal.
You know the deal. It is what it is.
Right.
You know, you're just like, you roll with it. So, what year in school are you then?
So we had both been asked not to continue our scholastic careers as seniors, and
as seniors.
Yep. So I finished school with 1.83.
Nice.
It was fantastic.
Nice. That sounds like my high school GPA.
Yep.
Good job.
That's what. I left college with a lot of student loans. A 1.83 and no degree.
Nice.
And I can tell you about it later, but the story of finishing my degree with the same college 20 years later, it was pretty funny. I was on academic probation as a 45-year-old.
Hey, whatever it takes. So we're going to kind of now jump down the pipe of your career real quick. But before we do that, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with that. If you're passionate about firearms and the Second Amendment like I am, one of the best places in all of Montana to go is Mitchell Supply. Jim and Tammy Mitchell have been running this gun store for decades. They're major supporters of the Second Amendment, and they're major supporters of our community, and obviously they're supporters of this podcast. For all your firearms needs, go check out Mitchell Supply today. Your health journey is as unique as you are. The Peak Great Falls has everything you need for your fitness journey. They are your partner in wellness with a top-notch facility, an expert staff, and a very welcoming vibe. Locally owned, community-driven. Join them today. One of the best family-owned businesses in Great Falls is Schulte's Coffee House. They have amazing coffees, frozen yogurts. You can even stop in and fill up your car. They are a full-fledged convenience store and are world famous for their chicken and my wife's favorite, the Bosco sticks. Go check out Schulte's Coffee House today. When deciding who I would trust for the technology component of this podcast, the choice was simple: Information Systems of Montana. Whether purchasing products for business or when I had them build me a new MacBook to catch child predators, they delivered, creating a solution for my exact needs. Contact Information Systems of Montana today. The Double Barrel Cafe is all about you, the amazing people of Cascade County. With every purchase you make, they give back to our community. Every bite and sip fuels their mission. Let's make a positive change, one cup and one bite at a time, because the Double Barrel is not just a cafe, they're building a better community. Are you looking to replace those floors in your home? Or maybe you're doing new construction? The place I trust is Contract Flooring Carpet One. This is a locally owned and operated business here in Great Falls, and they are committed to serving you and giving you the very best prices and the very best product and service. Go see Contract Flooring Carpet One today. If you haven't noticed lately, Cascade County is booming, and one of the places I depend on to get all my construction needs is Builders First Source. Whether you're a contractor or a do-it-yourselfer, Builders First Source has everything you need. Stop in and see their amazing staff for all your building supplies today. This community is so good.
Yes.
Yeah, so good.
Well, the community's fantastic.
Yeah. I always make the comment. So back in the day when you and I were going through orientation together,
Yep.
I didn't want to be here.
Right.
It was my ex-wife kind of was like, this was a place she kind of wanted to come to. I didn't really want to. And I was kind of looking for a way to get out of here. And it was interesting because I didn't really want to be here, but Great Falls and Cascade County just adopted me.
Right.
And it was undeniable after a while. And then, of course, I meet my wife, and she's from here, and then I'm hooked.
That's crazy, right? I know Quimby and I, our intention when we moved here was like, all right, we'll get like a year and a half of experience with Great Falls Fire and move back to Helena. And in fact, we didn't even sell our house. We leased it with that intent. And then we got up here and we got plugged into a good church. It was like, nah, we're never leaving.
Well, and that's the whole point of this podcast. Is that, and I know I've talked to you about this before, but I feel like Cascade County, it lives in this bubble, right? And the whole world is crazy. I mean, we see what's going on in the Ukraine, Israel, DC's a dumpster fire.
Right.
The West Coast is just awful right now. Nothing's going the way it's supposed to go. We don't recognize certain places we grew up and were around as America anymore.
For sure.
You talk about being around Portland. I grew up in Bozeman. We don't, those places don't even look like what they were when we were kids.
Not at all.
And we sit here and we say this, but yet Cascade County's in this bubble and everybody wants to move here now. Housing's through the roof. The cost of living here is dirt cheap, but the housing is like obscene right now.
But compare it to Bozeman, compare it to Missoula, compare it to Kalispell.
But in comparison, though, it shouldn't be this much.
Right.
But it's because there's this bubble of awesomeness because this community is so great. So that's the whole point of this podcast is how are we going to make our community better? How are we going to bring people together? What can we do for people out there who are watching this to understand, like, we do live literally in the last best place inside the last best place. And if we don't hone this, preserve it, care for it, nurture it, and take care of each other, I mean, not only we're going to lose this spot, everything's going to go away. We have to be contagious and go out and tell the world how great this place is.
Right. Well, and it's a knife that cuts both ways. Okay. Yeah. Because for those of us that are like long-term residents, I mean, I consider we've lived here for, 22, 23 years. Okay. So I consider myself a long-termer. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Not going anywhere. But the idea of telling everybody how great it is, then we get an influx. But I understand how important it is. I mean, But yeah, no, we've seen a huge influx, but it's been good in a lot of ways.
Oh, I think so. You know, from growing up in Bozeman, and the influx was all these out-of-staters who
Right.
came to Bozeman to change Bozeman.
For sure.
You know, Bozeman was this little cowboy town with the College National Finals rodeo
Yep.
and
The ski hill.
ski hill. I mean, ski cowboy town, right? You know, and now they don't talk about skiing. That's just something for the elites to go do on the weekend. They don't talk. They don't. It's just this big city conglomerate in a smaller location.
Right.
Have you seen that recent commercial that's on, they play it on YouTube a lot. It tells you how to be nice in Bozeman.
Oh my gosh! Does it tell you how to be silent at the soccer game too? I mean,
It's incredible.
it's the most pretentious place I've ever been to in my life. And I grew up there. When I grew up there, man, it was like, we'll take you out in the back alley and, you know, kick your ass
Right.
type of community.
But what's okay, and this is probably not meant to be a sideways slap, but it's kind of fun. My wife and I went to Bozeman, got an Airbnb like 3 weeks ago. It was the weekend of the silent soccer match. Okay.
Oh, you went for the silent soccer
No,
match?
no, it just happened while we were
Oh, I
there.
would have gone there and protested.
Yeah,
I'd have
so-
screamed at the top of my lungs.
So we get an Airbnb, we go down there, we do our thing, we have a fantastic time. And I told her, I said, this is amazing. I said, the cool thing is it's like going to California and it's a 3-hour drive.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it offers all the amenities of being out of state.
It does.
And the same attitude as being out of state.
Yeah.
But you don't ever have to hardly leave home.
So when my wife and I were young, all the way up until our early 40s, like one weekend a month, and I'm not exaggerating, we would go to Bozeman for
Nice.
a getaway weekend. We'd get grandma and grandpa to watch the kids. We'd go, and we kind of had like we'd get a hotel downtown.
Yep.
And this is back when they had like a Best Western downtown
Sure.
for like $79 a
Right.
night.
They're all boutique hotels
Yeah,
now.
they all are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story about one of them. So anyway, we'd go down there and we'd have date weekend, and it was high end drinks, high end appetizers, high end meals. And this is back when I had my city job and my overtime.
Right. Yep.
And I'd take my overtime money down there, and I would go and we would spend like tons of money. It was all about her and I's relationship, total us time.
Yep.
It was the greatest, still to this day, the greatest memories of my life with my favorite person in my life. Just absolutely loved it. And then they literally priced us out of going there.
Right.
And I'm not exaggerating. There was weekends we spent $2,000 there then because we were living it up.
Right.
And we were like, okay, we're going to enjoy ourselves
For sure.
because this is our date.
Right.
And we're going to go do it. So then we resorted to staying at my aunt and uncle's, which wasn't bad. My aunt and
Right.
uncle are amazing. We had a spare bedroom. We could still go do all the fun things and have a great time. And we didn't have to pay the $400 a night hotel cost.
For sure.
It got so expensive there, though, that they priced us out of going out to eat.
That's crazy, right?
Like 2 meals, and we were out of money. And we're like, this is obscene.
Right.
We spent so much money there. I remember we've bought vehicles there before. I mean, we were pushing their economy like crazy, you know, and coming there and doing it. And now you have to be a billionaire to push their economy.
Right.
And it's just, it's disgusting. And I pray, I hope and I pray every day, because I'm telling you, I grew up in Bozeman in the 90s, and Great Falls has 20 times more than Bozeman had going on in the 90s. This is the boom. This is
Right.
the next thing. I tell everybody this is the next Bozeman of Montana.
Right.
And they don't believe me. And I'm like, no, it's going to hit. And you've got about 10 to 15 years. So how are we going to keep it local, keep it, you know?
Well, I remember a few years back, the city commission and Mayor Kelly they were pushing the idea of Great Falls as a base camp, in that you're 45 minutes to an hour from anything that the state of Montana has to offer, and it's true. I mean, you want to do blue ribbon trout fishing? It's like you can either do it in town or you can drive to a more scenic place a half hour from town and kill it. You want to have great skiing? go to Great Divide or to Showdown.
Showdown.
Yeah, go to Showdown.
Showdown's killer.
No, absolutely.
I shouldn't even say this on this podcast because Showdown, I grew up skiing at Bridger Bowl as a kid.
Yep.
Showdown's better than Bridger Bowl. When I was a
Right.
kid.
And they have the Champagne Snow and, and the Rocky Mountain Front. You have all these things. It's a fantastic way to look at our town. Like if you look at Great Falls and you're like, hey, well, I would prefer to do this. Well, okay, well, get out Onyx and see that it's 45 minutes away, or it's a half hour, or it's an hour. And you can go to anything. And fortunately, I mean, a lot of people, when they're smart, they do that. I mean, it's like, why wouldn't why wouldn't you want to live in Great Falls?
So you bring up something super interesting when you talk about all the accessibility there is here and everything that there is here. And it's completely true. It's so scary. So this year, my dad bought me a guided fishing trip on the Missouri.
Okay.
And I'm laughing.
Did you leave out of Craig or what?
Well, no, we went all the way up to the dam and then floated down to Craig.
Yep, I got you.
So we
That's
get
a
this
good
guide.
trip.
It is. We get this guide out of Bozeman.
Right.
Hilarious.
Right.
I had to laugh. I'm like, really? Super good dude though. My dad and I had the time of our lives.
Yep.
There was fish. It got to a point where you needed a break. I had a bottle of water, and I'm a big time water drinker, like a gallon a day of water.
Okay.
I didn't even get the top half of the water, where the bottleneck's down.
Yep.
I didn't even get that drank because I was fish on the entire time.
That's the kind of day you want.
And I'm sitting there going, I fished this by myself, and I've never had a day like that.
Right.
But the guide's like, hey, try this over here. Why? Let's change up your rod real quick. Let's do, and you're just landing and landing. It got to the point where I set my rod down for a while in the boat because I was like, I haven't seen anything.
Right.
I've seen no scenery. I haven't watched my dad catch fish because he's catching them while I'm catching them because we're catching so many. And I'm sitting here going, I remember saying to myself, I'm like, we are so screwed. We are so screwed. Because as people come in here and figure all this stuff out, and I just hope and pray they come. And it's funny because I've never been like a big like environmentalist or conservationist.
Right.
But all of a sudden you kind of start changing your tune and you're like, whoa. Let's ease all this population in.
Right. Let's see how it fits.
Yeah, it changes your wheelhouse.
For sure.
So anyway, enough about that. Back to you. So you have this total God moment. You bust your ass. You get this opportunity, and you're sure you're just like me, and you're like, "Where's Great Falls?"
Right.
And
So we
you
literally
land a job.
Yeah. So we literally, when we came up for my interview, Quimby and I came up and we're like trying to remember if we've ever been to Great Falls. We stopped at the Holiday gas station at Fox Farm, and I asked, I filled up the car with gas, and I asked the lady, this is funny. I'm like, where are the Great Falls? Like, I thought there was a Great Falls. Like it's named that for a reason. I want to go see the Great Falls. And nobody knew what I was talking about. And then you find out, oh yeah, they built the dam. There's no more Great Falls, and so yeah, finding the town and then landing the job and then getting to know the people and getting to know the people on a unique level as a first responder, but also plugging into the air quotes normal community outside of our customer base it was like, no, we're going to stay here.
Yeah.
No,
Absolutely.
it was great.
I have a Great Falls story too. I did the same thing to my dad. He brought me here for the East West Shrine game. And I was like a sophomore or something in high school. And I said, hey, Dad, where are the Great Falls? So he took me to the dam.
Right. There you go.
Black Eagle Dam.
Yep, there you
and
go.
No, it was super cool.
Yep.
No, I mean, it is cool. And now with the flag, it's even way cooler.
Right.
But I remember I was like, oh, okay. And then, because I'd read all the Lewis and Clark books when I was a kid. So sorry, I digress. But
No,
I had
for
the
sure.
same,
Yep.
I had the same thing.
Where
like,
are the Great Falls?
I grew up in Bozeman, and we used to go down to the Yellowstone National Park, and they have the huge waterfall in Yellowstone National Park. And that's what I was expecting.
I was
like,
too.
oh yeah, it's gonna be, but it's still cool.
Right. No, and what was interesting is that at some point in my life, I decided I was an ultra marathon runner, and one of my training runs I would do is I'd leave out of one of the dams, Rainbow, and run the single track out past Cochrane and all the way out towards Ryan Dam. And we'd use that as a training area. And
How many miles was that?
it's 13. So on a air quotes long day, I'd run out and back and out and back. So I'd run basically a 26-mile run, and then I'd leave at 4 o'clock in the morning, run that, and then go back home at like 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, and then try to be a dad. So it was. There's a reason that aspect, that segment of my life only lasted about a year and a half.
Well, you're kind of built for that, though.
There's a guy named Cameron Haynes. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a bow hunter and an athlete. And he and I were both, he was the editor for Eastman's Bow Hunting. I was an editor for a magazine called Real Hunting out of Missoula. And I was kind of just getting my chops as a writer and an editor. And he was pretty good at it by then. And to the point where he would take an email from me every once in a while, but we were not the same. Right. And, but he was doing it. So I figured, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And I just randomly started running ultra distances. And it was fantastic. It was a funny thing. I got in great shape, had a good time doing it, ran a couple of actual races, and then realized that, hey, this is taking a lot of time away from my family.
Oh, running's a huge time suck.
Yeah.
I did it for a long time. Both my wife and I did it.
Nice.
And we would literally have days on the weekends where it was like, okay, it's your turn to run. And I'd watch the kids and she'd run. And we finally bought a running stroller.
Okay. Yep.
And then we'd run together. But she'd be like, I'm going to call her out here. She'd say, I hate that effing stroller. And so there I
running
would be
with a stroller is different,
in Gibson
man.
Park with, like 2 babies in the stroller running. And she'd be like, she already could outrun me.
Right.
So then I had to run even further behind her.
Right.
So anyway, I can relate. It's a lot. It's a big time suck.
Yep. No, it is. Yeah. It'll put you in the best shape of your life. If you do it long enough, but yeah, it is a time suck.
It's a huge time suck.
So, but talking about Bozeman, one of the races that I got to do was the Bridger Ridge Run.
You did that.
Yeah.
I always wanted to do it. I never did.
Yeah, no, you start at Ferry Lake and then go up and get up on the ridge, and that's a significant elevation gain. I think it's a couple thousand feet or a little more. And then once you get up on the ridge, you just run the whole ridge back to the M and then run straight down the M. It was I've never been fast, but it was really fun.
So for those that don't understand what this is, so I was in search and rescue in Gallatin County when I was a kid.
Sure you were.
And we rescued multiple people off the Bridger Ridge Run.
Right.
And I always wanted to do it. I always wanted to, but just like for whatever reason, I was out of town or I hadn't trained enough because you need to train for it.
No, for sure.
You can't mess around.
No, you don't want to go into that cold.
No, because I think it's 13 miles?
No, it's 21.
21 miles.
Yep.
Okay, 21 miles. And for those that don't understand, when we're talking a ridge run, it's not this like evergreen mountaintop with a beautiful like dirt trail that you're running on. It's shale and it's slipping off on both sides. And it's like, there's like eagles soaring below you.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. There's places where the ridge is, I don't know, I'm just guessing, but maybe 10 feet wide.
Yep.
And you're running on that. I think it's the Bozeman, I think the Wind Drinkers.
Yes.
Yeah, they
trail club.
Yeah, they put the race on, and they've got some fantastic drone footage of the race. And it got so popular. Like when I got into it, they had registration started at like say 8 a.m. and you had to be on your computer at 8 a.m. and just immediately fill out all the information and you could get in.
You're like, submit.
Yep, yeah. And I think now it's on a lottery.
It is on a lottery now.
Yeah. So there's no guarantee that you can run it at all, let alone every year. Yeah. So now it was fun to do it once though. So,
that's a cool bucket list item.
Yeah.
That's good.
And something you can get into that's a really good race too is the Elkhorn Mountain Endurance Run down out of Clancy or Montana City, south of Helena. And I did that one it was a 50K, and they have a 50K, a 50 mile, and a 100 mile. And I did the 50K, but seeing the people running the 50 mile and the 100 mile, it's like all right, if you think you're cool and then you see people that are cool and you go, I am nothing.
No, I don't do that anymore.
Right.
I lift weights and I lift weights and I don't
No wonder you're yoked.
I don't mess with the running anymore.
Right.
I get my cardio through, okay, I can do 30 pull-ups so that when I breathe hard in between those, that's when I get my cardio.
I got you.
I mean, it's so, I do love it that the whole runner's high, the whole thing. But one is a time suck.
Yep.
And then the other thing about it is it's just like, as you get to be our age, it's just so pounding on your body.
No, it's a pounder.
It is. It's tough, but it's addicting.
No, it is.
Super addicting. So you're here in Great Falls. You're running 26 miles a day.
That's an exaggeration.
I know. But no, so talk to me about the whole probationary fireman thing.
Okay.
I'm dying to know. What's it like to be a probationary fireman in the River City?
Okay. So when I got hired, it seemed like it was probably the tail end of probation that was hard enough that it was borderline hazing.
Yeah.
And it was great because I came into it just being like, hey, I'm the new guy. And I talked to a bunch of career firefighters outside of Great Falls. I did a bunch of research because I'm a researcher, and I'm like, how am I going to do really well at this? I don't just want to pass probation. I want to do good.
Yeah, crush it.
You're right.
Real quick, what did they call you as a probationary fireman? They have a nickname for you?
I eventually got a nickname partway through probation of Finch.
Finch.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because as you know, you never get to pick your own nickname.
No.
And your nicknames are never cool.
No.
Right. I mean, you don't get to be like, Smoke Eater or something like that. No. So we're, so I worked with Tom Zaremski and George Cook. Okay. Fantastic crew.
Yeah.
Right. And I learned so much from them. Okay. So we're on a call one night and it was a hit and run where a vehicle had hit a car with a bunch of teenage girls in it and then left. And the pickup that had hit them had left some debris. And so I'm like going through the debris, trying to figure out like, okay, what can we match this with, And
you're gumshoeing it right there.
No, I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. And while I'm in the process of going through like miscellaneous stuff, trying to like come up with some random like idea of what it might be, Tom Zaremski holds up a license plate that the truck had left.
You're like,
he goes,
did he call you Captain Obvious?
No. He called me a lot of things. So we're in the engine on the way back to the to quarters, and they were talking about, hey, if you could be like a detective from a detective show, who would you be? And they're talking, and I'm in the back. So I've got a headset on so I can hear him, but I can't see him.
Right.
And I'm like, I go, yeah. I said way back in the day, there was a detective show called Spencer for Hire. And I said, there was a really big black guy with a shaved head, freaking jacked. And he always wore a trench coat and he had a sawed off shotgun in it. His name was Hawk. And I said, I'd be Hawk. And Tom says over the earphones, he goes, Hawk, he goes, you ain't nothing but a damn Finch. And that stuck. Oh, it stuck forever. I mean, I still have guys from the fire department.
Your nickname, by the way, is far better than mine when I was on probation.
Okay. Do tell.
So first of all, the Great Falls Police Department used to call us poopies.
Okay.
When we were on FTO, we were called the poopy. And my nickname was, and I got to say it in my best Bill Beluski voice, Jessica. Yes, that was my nickname.
How did you land that?
Jesse.
Oh,
Jessica.
I got you.
Yeah, like one day he's like, hey, come on, Jessica. And it's stuck. And
it's the weirdest thing.
Shit, for probably like, I don't know, 5 years when, anybody wanted to throw shade at me or anything. Or then when people just who have been my friends forever who want to remind me.
Right.
And they always say it in that voice, that Jessica, because Beluski smoked and it's hilarious. But anyway. So yeah, you had Finch is a far better name.
Yeah.
I'd take Finch any day of the week.
Yep. Yeah. It makes me smile. And the cool thing is if you roll with it.
Oh yeah, you got it.
if you roll with it, it still sticks, but you don't get ridden like a rented mule.
The worst thing you can do
is protest.
For those of you watching, when you've suffered through hazing, the worst thing you do is you fight the hazing.
No, you can't fight it.
No, you accept it. You roll with it. You call yourself by your own name, by your nickname. You wear it as a badge of honor. It goes fast. It's a lot easier.
Yep. No. So probation was great. I had a variety of captains for the first few months, and then I landed with George Cook, and he was a great guy. Became a career-long mentor.
That's awesome.
Until we hit a certain place where he's like, hey, and you have to be humble and understand yourself to be able to do this. I got to a place in my career where I wanted to advance a little bit more, and he just patted me on the back. He said, I've taken you as far as I can take you. Here's your next guy.
That's awesome.
So being a fireman was fantastic. It was, I was probably too enthusiastic at first. Because I was the guy that I'm walking around going, give me a structure fire. I was super excited, and everybody wants to prove their worth, right?
Absolutely.
And in the firefighting business, proving your worth means I get a structure fire that I get to go inside on.
Oh yeah.
And prove that I'm cut out to be here.
Did you go into them with like your turnouts open, because
backdraft is real, right?
Was that Kurt Russell? Yeah. Kurt Russell. By the way, he was super badass in that movie.
Oh yeah.
But even as I was like a high school. I had to come out when we were in high school, didn't
right?
it?
Yep.
Even then, I was like, shouldn't you be wearing something? well, you knew it was because the other guys were wearing it,
right?
But he
not
wasn't.
him, right?
Yeah, because he was a smoke eater,
right?
No, but seriously though, there's where I was going to go with that little comment though is when you get into these professions, whether you get into law enforcement, military, firefighting, these first responder hard jobs, there is a little bit of pressure when you're especially young to prove yourself,
right?
And the culture forces you to. And I mean, it's almost unhealthy, but it's a little bit of a culture of like, you need to prove your worth here. And when you feel that, first of all, you feel alone when you're on probation. Mm-hmm. So you turn to TV,
right?
Be like, how do I emulate myself? Because it's not, like you've got George Cook, who's your mentor at the time, right? Mm-hmm. But he's not a probationary rookie with you.
No.
It seems impossible.
Yeah, he's miles ahead, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So people don't understand that pressure.
Well,
it's huge.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when you are a first responder, because I've had the privilege to be a volunteer firefighter, volunteer EMT, went down with Clancy, a professional firefighter, a career firefighter with Great Falls Fire Rescue for 20 years. About 3 years into that, I became a paramedic. I got to hold almost every rank in the organization. I was a SWAT medic with the Great Falls Police Department for 12 years. During that time, I got to do almost. I worked for the ambulance, the private ambulance company. I moonlit for them. So just about anything that you can do where you wear a uniform and are a first responder in this town, I've had the opportunity to do. And as you know, I'm now a reserve deputy. I was a reserve deputy for you before I started with the police department.
Right.
Right. So, I've gotten to wear a uniform and do almost everything you can do in this county, which is fantastic. But each of those things come with its own unique proving ground.
Absolutely.
And when I worked for the fire department, there was a pressure, and some of it was probably self-induced. But it's like, hey, I need to get a structure fire so that I can show the guys that I can be one of them. That it's because, until then you're kind of an all hat and no cattle rancher. Right. But when you get that first fire, when we had that first fire, and I performed satisfactorily or well, within the confines of my crew, we did a good job. And then you walk away with some takeaways where your captain comes and says, hey, you could have done this better. Next time I'd like to see this, but you did this, and this really well. And I'm proud of the work that you did. And then it's just something to build on,
right.
It's something to build on because as a firefighter, good fires, especially good fires where you have an opportunity at a live victim rescue, that's like the Super Bowl. Especially with, not to get scientific on you, but with houses filled with modern furnishings that are all polystyrene and foam based that poof, evaporate in the clouds of horrible chemicals. The chances of getting live victim rescues, it's tough. It's like a unicorn. And so what was cool is towards the end of my time on the streets before I became an administrator, I had the opportunity to work with some crews where we made some grabs, and it was cool because the career up until then, there'd been enough calls that one had built on another and another and another, and with consistent training that when the opportunity presented itself, it was just game time. The crew that I was with did fantastic work.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was.
I want to hear about one of those, but before we do, let's take a quick break and we'll go to a commercial real quick. And when we come back, I really want to hear about at least one of the good saves.
All right.
Sounds
good.
If you haven't noticed lately, Cascade County is booming, and one of the places I depend on to get all my construction needs is Builders First Source. Whether you're a contractor or a do-it-yourselfer, Builders First Source has everything you need. Stop in and see their amazing staff for all your building supplies today. Are you looking to replace those floors in your home? Or maybe you're doing new construction? The place I trust is Contract Flooring Carpet One. This is a locally owned and operated business here in Great Falls, and they are committed to serving you and giving you the very best prices and the very best product and service. Go see Contract Flooring Carpet One today. The Double Barrel Cafe is all about you, the amazing people of Cascade County. With every purchase you make, they give back to our community. Every bite and sip fuels their mission. Let's make a positive change, one cup and one bite at a time, because the Double Barrel is not just a cafe, they're building a better community. When deciding who I would trust for the technology component of this podcast, the choice was simple: Information Systems in Montana. Whether purchasing products for business or when I had them build me a new MacBook to catch child predators, they delivered, creating a solution for my exact needs. Contact Information Systems in Montana today. Your health journey is as unique as you are. The Peak Great Falls has everything you need for your fitness journey. They are your partner in wellness, with a top-notch facility and expert staff and a very welcoming vibe. Locally owned, community-driven. Join them today. If you're passionate about firearms and the Second Amendment like I am, one of the best places in all of Montana to go is Mitchell Supply. Jim and Tammy Mitchell have been running this gun store for decades. They're major supporters of the Second Amendment, and they're major supporters of our community. And obviously, they're supporters of this podcast. For all your firearms needs, go check out Mitchell Supply today. One of the best family-owned businesses in Great Falls is Schulte's Coffee House. They have amazing coffees, frozen yogurts. You can even stop in and fill up your car. They are a full-fledged convenience store and are world famous for their chicken and my wife's favorite, the Bosco sticks. Go check out Schulte's Coffee House today. So when we left off, we started talking about making an actual save and what that was like. So can you remember what your most memorable one was?
Yeah. Well, and I guess, like I told you earlier, I'm like an open book. Okay. So I got to tell you about one of the screw ups I made first.
Okay.
Okay. So we were in an apartment fire downtown, and we're in an apartment fire downtown. Everything's all blacked out. You can't see anything. And I'm crawling around up on the third floor with another guy. Can't see the hand in front of my face. I'm feeling along the wall. And I'm feeling along the wall, I'm trying to find an apartment because there's allegedly somebody trapped in this apartment, right? Feel my way along, and I find what I think is a door frame. And I'm like, so I tell the guy that I'm with, I'm like, hey, I've got a door, give me the axe. So he gives me the axe, and I can't find a knob, but I like find both sides of what I think is the door frame. And I'm like, all right, it must be right here. I just can't find the knob. And like I said, can't see. So I start freaking swinging with this axe, and I'm trying to force this door. Door, I can't ever get the door. And about 6 feet away, as I'm pounding on this, a door opens. I'm like, what just happened? And anyway, long story short, after all the smoke clears, this was a humongous piece of art that had a frame that was, it was like a 2x4 frame.
Nice.
And I had chopped a very large hole through a large piece of art in the hallway. So,
To knock on the door.
right. Yep. Yeah, and it worked. But yeah, no, that took a little explaining because
That's awesome.
after all the smoke clears and you can actually see, it's like, what the hell happened here?
That's great.
Yeah. So
That's great.
But anyway, so one night, I think it was either January or February. It was dead of winter. It was below zero, single digits below zero. I think it was 8 below, as I recall. And we get dispatched to a group home with an alarm sounding. Okay, so, and this isn't uncommon. I mean, like literally, I was the captain on a ladder truck that night, and we're going to the call, and it was like 2:00 in the morning. So we'd gotten woke up to go to the call. So I'm like rubbing the sleepies out of my eye. I'm literally like, my coat's buttoned, but my SCBA air pack isn't all the way on in the seat. And I'm waiting for the first arriving unit to show up and cancel us because I'm like, this is total BS. A resident of the group home got up to pee and then is like, you know what? Click, I'm going to pull the alarm because this happened all the time.
Happens all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're on our way to this call and I hear the first arriving captain give a size up, basically nothing showing. And I'm like, yep, I'm going to go back to closing my eyes as we're driving there, you know? And then all of a sudden on the radio, I hear the captain, who is normally very chill, say, "We've got fire." And I'm like, well, that's not normal for him. Right. So I sat straight up in my seat, got all my buckles tightened and told my guys, hey, why are your shit tight? You know? And we roll up on the scene in a cul-de-sac of a group home with fire rolling out the front door. And the lady she was the night group home manager, standing outside, and there's a hose line running into the building. And the first thing that she tells me when I walk up to her, she's this look horror on her face. And I can still remember, it's one of those few things that's indelibly printed on your hard drive. And she looks right at me with fear in her eyes and she said, they're all still in there.
Oh.
And I'm like, holy crap, tonight's the night, you know? And so my firefighter and I she said, go left, go to the left, go to the left. So we go to the left and we've got smoke banked down about, I don't know, about 3 feet of visibility. So it's a really awkward thing. You don't have to crawl, but if you stand up, you can't see. So you're doing like this modified duck walk. And we're kind of following this other hose line that's already been pulled in there by the first arriving engine company. And then things get all black and smoky and we can't see. And we kind of fight our way into this room and there's not very much fire. I mean, we like put a little bit of water on fire and we're like, what the hell's going on here? And then as soon as you put water on fire, you get steam. Right. And it's dark out anyway and you can't see anything. So we're shining our flashlight and we're digging through this big debris pile. I mean, there'd already been some kind of a collapse. And we're like, what is going on? So I'm digging through this debris pile. I find a captain's helmet from the fire department. And I'm like, what just happened, right? So at that time, we only had one radio frequency. Everything else was on maintenance. So we have one radio frequency, and they're dispatching a medical call on that frequency right then. And so I'm trying to get out with a mayday, like, hey, mayday, mayday, mayday. You know, potentially we have a guy down. But they're dispatching a medical, so my firefighter's digging through the debris, trying to see, okay, so one of a few things has happened here, okay? The crew before us suffered some kind of catastrophic problem and they're buried, or they had some kind of a very minor issue. The captain lost his helmet and they're standing outside right now and he's going, where's my damn helmet, right? And so I can't get a mayday call out. Super frustrating. We dig around, can't find anything. I grab the helmet. I go, let's get back outside. So we book it back outside and that captain's standing there with no helmet. So I toss him his helmet and then the group home lady, she goes, no, you have to go to the right.
Oh.
So by the time that I talked to her, somebody else had swooped our line. So our hose line's gone. And I'm like, okay, this is one of the rare instances where it's like, all right, the hose line protects you.
Yeah.
So if you're crawling around looking for smoke and fire and you find it, you have something to put it out with. But the less obvious thing, if you're not a firefighter, is that it's also your lifeline back out.
Right. You follow it out.
Yeah, you can turn right back around and follow it out if the smoke conditions get
It's
bad.
going to a truck.
Right. You just got to follow it back out. So I look at this guy that was my firefighter, and I'm like, hey, there's no lines and no time. Let's go. So we went searching without a line. So we're crawling down the hallway, feeling on the wall to keep ourselves oriented. So we're doing a right hand search. We're up against the wall with our right shoulder and our right hands, and we find a doorway. It's an actual doorway, not a piece of art. We crawl into this room, and I tell him, I just said, you go high, I'll go low. And I went low under the bed because people often pop under the beds. Mm-hmm. I'm doing a sweep under the bed, and he's like, hey man, I got one. And pop up, and there's one of the residents of the home is in that bed, and eyes wide open, scared to death. And and the two of us grabbed him, went outside, and then it was rinse and repeat. There was another crew there doing work, and there was 4 people that got taken out. Two that were able to walk out under their own power, and then 4 people that were taken out. All of them were miraculously okay. So despite crazy weather conditions and a lot of things that could have gone wrong or could really went against us, that night it all went right. And it was a cool opportunity for our crew because nobody with any sense of self or any sense of humility says, I did that. No, none of us did that. We did it. You know what I mean? We had the opportunity. Because there's firefighters in busy systems all over the world that never get the chance to do that in their career. Yeah. And Great Falls Fire Rescue is no joke, man. I mean, if you're stationed downtown at Station 1, you'll run on a 24-hour shift. You'll go out the door on 15 to 20 calls, which is a lot of freaking calls in 24 hours because those guys are spending their time. If it's industry-wide, we call that a BS call. I mean, if you roll out on a BS call, I mean, from the time that you leave the station to the time that you realize that, hey, this person has a stub toe or a sore throat. It's just a cat
in a tree. We're good. We can go back.
I've had a few of those.
That's the consummate cop joke.
Oh yeah. It's funny being on the other side now, but by the time you roll out, go to the BS call, sort out the fact that that's what it is.
Right.
Come back, and everything generates paper, as you know.
Oh yeah.
And you knock out the report and try to do some training or something productive in the meantime, and then go on another one. Those guys are as busy as any fire department in the country. Those guys downtown.
Oh, I would agree.
So yeah, they do really good work. So
no, I totally agree. I mean, I think Great Falls Fire. I take Great Falls Fire Rescue over any fire department around. And it's not that I haven't been around other fire departments.
Right. No, they do solid work. So getting a chance to work for them for 20 years, and I was like 3 years in, and I had the chance to go to paramedic school. And the Carico Trust had a deal where current firefighters that were EMTs that wanted to become paramedics could apply for and test for this program where you would become a paramedic. They would send you to a compressed paramedic school class because paramedic school is 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so they would send you to a course that would do that in 6 months.
Oh, geez.
So I talked to my wife, and I don't think she knew it all. Neither one of us really did, to be fair, what it really entailed and what the time commitment would be. But she's like, yeah, go do it, I guess. And
where was it?
It was here in Great Falls.
Oh, was it here?
Yeah, at MSU College, MSU Great Falls.
So was it like all day?
Yeah, no. Okay. So what they did is for those of us that got selected to participate in the program, they took you off shift for 6 months, and for 6 months you went to college full time, and it was full time plus because you're doing a 2-year program in 1 semester.
Yeah.
Plus all the clinical hours. Yeah. And then at the end of it, they shipped us out to Tucson, Arizona for 2 weeks. We rode with Tucson Fire for 2 weeks.
No way.
Yeah, and that's where we did our paramedic internship.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So no, it was so to get the opportunity to become a medic and then
absolutely.
Yeah, and then spend the rest of my career as a medic, and now I'm a PINO, paramedic in name only. I still have my paramedic certification, but I'm not doing anything with it.
Are you
right
going to
now.
keep up with it?
I think I will. We'll see. I mean, it's a, I don't use it much really at all in my current career.
Right.
But it's one of those things that you work hard and earn it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you don't want to just let it go.
No, I think it's huge. I mean, I remember, so for those out there, he kind of touched on this, but you kind of skimmed over it. You were our medic on our SWAT team.
Yeah, no,
When I served on the SWAT team, it was cool.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. So going back to college, just real quick, I had a professor named Stan Husted. Okay. He introduced to me the concept of what he referred to as a wish list. Okay. So, and he had these cheesy things printed out, just a small 1-page form, said wish list. And it said date, importance. I think it was just date and importance. Date, wish, importance. And he said, it was an interesting, at that time, I'd never heard of goal setting in this way. He said, I want you to sit down with that blank piece of paper and anything that comes to your mind with no disqualifiers, write it down. No disqualifiers. Don't be like, well, I could never do that. I could never afford it. That might not be a good fit. No disqualifiers. Write them down. And then he said, quarterly, pull those things out. And then some of those things will make no sense to you. You'll look at it and you'll be like, why did I want to do that? And he goes, those things, you just you scratch them out, put a line through it, and then date when you scratched it out. The things that you've accomplished will surprise you. You highlight those and date when you accomplished them. And other things, you're like, yeah, I think I still want to do that. So over the course of the last, almost 30 years now, I've done it annually. So, and my wife does it with me, and my kids do it with me now annually. We have files of their wish lists, and it is shocking the number of things that you seemingly don't put any effort into accomplishing. You're like, you might not even remember that you wrote it down. You're like, oh yeah, I did that. Well, one of the first things I wrote down was be on a SWAT team. Okay. And I wrote that down a bunch. And then I became a fireman, and I'm like, well, I guess that's not going to happen, right?
That ship sailed.
Right. And so I get, right after I become a medic, there becomes an opening on the Great Falls Police Department SWAT team as a medic. And I'm like, well, what's that? And at the time, GFPD they did medicine different. They did TAC medicine different then than they do now.
Very different.
Well, the whole industry shifted
Yeah.
Dramatically. But at that time, they had paramedics with full advanced life support capability that brought everything to the fight. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to do that. So I tested for that with the police department, got an offer, and I went to Chief Hester, who was the assistant fire chief at the time, and I said, hey, good news, Chief. I'm on the SWAT team now. And he's like, yeah, that's not exactly how that works. He's like, you need to talk to your battalion chief, who then needs to talk to me, and you need to get permission from everybody. And I'm like, well, I already tested. I'm already on. And he's like, you need to talk to your battalion chief. So that's another example of my exuberance getting ahead of me.
Yeah, but there's also a little bit of a leadership failure there, because it's posted, and they probably should have explained it in the
I'm not going to
posting.
blame it on anything.
No, I know, but it's a two-way street.
So I ran it up the chain, got on the SWAT team in 2005, and then stayed with it until 2017. And when Dave Bowen, the former chief of police, had asked me to become a chaplain, and there wasn't a way that I could do both. So no, it was.
I think we almost served the exact same tenure on the team.
Yep.
And that's crazy, because we started at the same time. But I think I was 2004 or 2005, and I think 2017. So I had a weird thing happen to me where I resigned from the team because I was doing internet crimes against children. Just didn't have the time.
Yep.
But then I was off for a year, and they had a couple of resignations they weren't expecting. So I came on again for a year.
I gotcha.
So I kind of had a weird, wonky end.
Right.
But I wanted to say I was maybe 15 or 16. I don't remember,
Right.
but it was interesting because we
Kind of parallel.
we served on the team. It was fun, and we were busy then.
Oh, yeah.
We had a lot of SWAT call outs. We had a couple of kind of sketchy situations.
Yep. No, and what's interesting as a firefighter is So we were sort of there. The guys before me plowed all the ground and made that possible.
Yeah.
But we were still in sort of like the Wild West of figuring it out. Like,
So was our SWAT team.
right. I mean, it was like people would ask me, they're like, so what happens if you get hurt at SWAT training? So I'm like, I don't know. So I'd ask somebody, I'm like, what happens if I get hurt? They're like, oh, the city will take care of you. I'm like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, it'll be fine. I'm like, and I was an armed member of the entry team. I didn't stand outside.
No.
I mean, so I'd a rifle and the whole thing. And so they're like, well, what happens if you shoot somebody? I'm like, I'm pretty sure the city will take care of me. And so I ask them, like, what happens if I shoot somebody? They're like, well, try not to shoot anybody, but if you do, you'll be fine. You know, so it was
exactly.
Yeah, it was super sketch, but it was.
Oh, it totally was.
But it was fun. I learned a lot, and in the most dangerous situations that we were in, looking back, I'm just like, whatever. I'm like, I mean, the guys in front of me that are asking me to help them, trust me enough to ask me, so I'm just going to do it, and we'll figure it out.
But you were a super squared away dude. Like, and I remember other firemen who were medics, and they were never as squared away as you. You would like do your research, you would read, you would practice. I mean, you could outshoot. I remember this all the time. I used to be like, don't have me have the firemen come up and outshoot you when I was instructor on the range, because I could have Shane just come up there and like burn them all down. Like, okay, knock it out. No, it's true though. You worked at it really hard.
Well, yeah, because I didn't want to look the fool. I respected the people that were on that team that allowed me to participate with them, because I mean, there's a big difference when I loved being a fireman. It was fantastic. Okay. But but to me, being even allowed to be on that team, it was like a special position kind of in my mind. I'm like, these guys trust me enough to let me, as a non-cop, hang out with them. So I'm going to bust my butt so that I can't be the worst shooter. I can't be in the worst physical shape. I need to strive to, one of the things I talk about all the time is control the controllables.
Right,
so
exactly.
I'm like, if I can control the type of shape I'm in, if I can control how well I shoot, if I can control my skills as a paramedic, those things I can control. So I might not ever be the best SWAT guy on the planet, and I wasn't. But if I control the controllables enough to earn the respect of the people on the team, then and be an asset, then that's what I tried to do.
You were damn good, and I would have taken you over a lot of our people that were cops.
Well,
because you were that. I mean, you were squared away. You paid attention, and I never worried about having you on the team at all. You were phenomenal. So let's talk about something. I want to transition into your law enforcement career here before we wrap up.
Okay,
but I love this story. I love this story for this ironic reason of that my wife's getting into this project. So you had a near-death experience with some bees.
Oh, we're going there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so for those that are watching, and you probably don't even know this yet, but my wife's new passion is beekeeping.
Nice.
And back over here behind the house, we have everything set up.
It's super
and
fun.
Ready to go for next year. And you had a really interesting encounter. So first of all, just real quickly, anecdotally, explain to us how you got into the whole bee thing, and then explain the incident that occurred that you almost died from.
Yeah. No, so a good friend of mine named Drew Steinberger, he used to run the bunch of stuff at North 40 Outfitters, and he got into bees, and he's into it huge now. But he got into bees, he's telling me about it, and I'm like, that sounds fun. I'm like, I'm going to try this. And we lived over by North Kiwanis Park in this like house that we bought for $85,000 and redid one room at a time, and lived in it for 18 years while I did the project. It was not something I'd recommend, but so I'm like, well, let's do this. So my wife, who's been fantastically supportive of my crazy adventures over the course of many, many years, tells me, she's like, yeah, go ahead and do it. So I get 2 hives. I got 2 hives going in the backyard, and it's fun. I'm having a great time. I think I made it one full season and then started the next. And one day my kids were having a bunch of people over from youth group, and they're having a youth group thing in the house, and my wife is gone, and I'm like, I'm gonna go check on the bees. So I go out, and I've been watching a bunch of videos on YouTube about handling bees, and I'm like, all right, I probably don't need to smoke them. And for those that don't know, a smoker is just a little container where you introduce smoke to the hive, and it chills out the bees. It'll either push them out and they'll leave, or it'll suck them into the hive. And I'm like, I think I'm fine. So I put my little bee outfit on, and I go out there. I don't smoke them, and I'm moving some trays of bees around. And so I've got, I don't know, probably at least 10,000 bees in the air, and they're all buzzing all around me, and they're crawling on my mask, and I'm like, yeah, we're all fine. I'm moving stuff around, and I didn't realize that I had a hole in the screen on my mask until I started to feel bees crawling on my neck, and I'm like, okay, this ain't great. And then they started stinging me, and so I did what any really strong red-blooded American male would do, and I freaked out. And started smacking them and trying to get away from them. And but there'd been enough of them in my suit that it wasn't happening. So I ran into the garage, stripped my suit off, killing bees. And I don't know how many times I got stung, but I stripped my suit off, and there was bees in my suit. So as I'm stripping it off, they're coming out and stinging me. And I'm out there by myself, and I realized, I'm like, the world started closing down. And I realized, hey, I'm in trouble here. And so by the time I get my suit stripped off, and I go over and I grab my phone's sitting on the workbench, and I know I have to call 911. I know I have to, and I'm looking at my phone, but I can't make myself do it. I wasn't with it enough to dial it.
Wow.
So I stepped out of the garage and looked at the house, which is probably only about 30 feet away. And I'm like, yeah, I'll never make it. And I just remember praying like a really religious prayer, something like, help me get to the house. That's all I remember. And I don't remember anything else after that, except for I was at the back door.
Wow.
And so I'm at the back door. I can hear my kids in the house, and I'm standing there, and I'm like, man, I don't want to embarrass my kids. And I just fell. I just fell over, landed on a cooler, super ungraceful fall, it sounds like, blew the cooler out. The kids are like, what the hell's going on? And my wife had gone that night, which at this time in her life, my wife didn't go out and do things too much to just do her own thing. Right. And she had gone out with Jen Perez. And the two of them had taken Jen's convertible out for a drive, and they'd done their thing. They'd had a great time. Well, they're sitting in front of the house talking, and she's got no idea this is going on, right? And so my kids come running out. They call 911. One of them starts doing chest compressions on me, and my youngest daughter texts her mom and said she called her a bunch. She called her like 2 or 3 times. My wife's just like, I'm sitting right out here. If she really needs to talk to me, she can just come out here. No one knew she was there, so she didn't answer.
Right.
And about the time that she sees a fire truck coming, code 3, my youngest daughter texts her and says, answer your effing phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife's like, what's going on? So she walked into the backyard right behind the fire truck. And so anyway, long story short, they loaded me up, transported me to the hospital, gave me I ended up with IV epi and Benadryl to reverse the whole thing. And it was a scary, weird moment where it's like, are you freaking serious? For all the stuff that I get to do with my occupation, bees are going to get me?
Yeah,
so,
no kidding.
Yeah, no, but it was...
It's your hobby. You're enjoying life.
No, I loved it. But it was super fun, but it was cool because Lieutenant Labard came over the next day and picked up my bees.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. So
Rich. So Rich Labard is the one who's been kind of mentoring us through the whole thing to kind of get it going. So.
Yeah, no, he and his wife came and picked up all the bees, and he's like, how much you want for them? I mean, because I had a lot of money invested, and I'm like, I just want them gone. Yeah, and
I bet you did.
but he did but no, he treated me right anyway. You know?
No, Rich is a good man.
Yeah.
No,
so doubt. Yeah, it was a crazy moment.
So. After all of this, you retire from Great Falls Fire Department. Great career, 20 years on. You get your full retirement, collect your retirement. You move out to the farm.
Yep.
Living the dream. You marry off your daughters.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
Yep.
You're now empty nesting with your wife Quimby, who's got a killer career in real estate. And then you decide, in your infinite wisdom, that it's time that you're going to get into law enforcement with the GFPD.
Yeah.
How do you get there?
Okay, so the timing was crazy. I remember when Quimby and I first met, I told her, I said, I'm going to be a cop. And she said, I won't marry a cop. And so I'm like, okay, well, all right. So I end up being a businessman, right? And then I end up being a firefighter. And then 25 years later, I'm talking to her. And at that time I was the deputy chief of training at Great Falls Fire Rescue. And I told her, I'm like, hey, I think something's coming. I'm like, what do you think about me being a cop? And what's crazy is that we hadn't got the farm yet. We were still remodeling the house in town to get it ready to sell.
Right.
We were in the process of buying the farm. We had so much going on that to switch careers in the midst of all of it was, it's kind of craziness, but it was another one of those God things where it's like all the stars aligned so that with the hiring process for GFPD, and in the midst of it, I tested to become a Cascade County Sheriff's Office Reserve Officer.
Yep.
And what I didn't know about that process, Jesse, is that to become a reserve, at least at that time, you took the same written test, same psych test, same physical, same everything as people that were becoming deputies. So I'm sitting in a room full of people that are like scared to death when I'm testing to become a reserve for you. And I'm like, hey man, what's going on? I'm like all lighthearted and everything, and everybody else is stressing.
Like,
And I'm like, what's going on? They're like, aren't you testing to be a deputy? And I'm like, yeah, reserve. And I was the only one in there that was testing to be a reserve. Yep. But again, treat everything like a tryout for the real deal. Put full out effort into everything. And so I did that when I tested for you. And then I remember shortly after that, I got in the process with GFPD, and I told you, I'm like, hey, I don't know if you should even waste the money on a uniform for me because I'm going someplace else.
Right.
But
it all worked out.
Yeah, no, it
all worked out perfect.
No, so to get the chance to, I did 12 years on SWAT and then 5 years as a chaplain for the PD. And then to get the opportunity to retire at 20 years in one day. And then I had 3.5 weeks off before my start date with GFPD. And I got a real glimpse of what things are going to be like when I actually retire. And it's fantastic. So to be able to get into law enforcement, I loved my career as a firefighter. It was fantastic. What I'm doing right now is absolutely a perfect fit for me. Anybody who's listening and anybody who I interact with on a daily basis, I'm like, hey, you ought to think about being a cop. And you should think about being a cop for us. Because I love the people I work with. I love my department. I love our community. And I believe that, and I work hand in hand with your guys all the time. So being either a deputy or a cop for GFPD, you have an opportunity every day on every shift to make some kind of a positive difference. Some days are better than others, but in the last, say, year and a half or 20 months or whatever it's been, I've had the chance to do stuff that I didn't even know that I would get a chance to do, and we're doing it, and also be able to work with some people and make a long-term impact in the lives of some of our customers. As you know, those opportunities are rare, but when you get a chance and someone actually turns a corner, it's it's amazing.
It's funny you said that. So long time ago, probably, 18 years ago now, my wife and I were newly married, and she was a social worker. So she was a CP. We met on a call, actually, is how we met. And we were talking one day, and I was complaining about my job. Not from a standpoint of I always loved my job. I tell people all the time, I'm one of those rare adults that have worked about 1 or 2 years in my life. The rest of the time I've just been having fun, and they keep paying me for it.
Yep.
But you have your moments, right? Yep. And I had this moment, and I was complaining to my wife, and she told me, she said, "What I wouldn't give to be you." And I looked at her and I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Every day you have a chance to make an impact in somebody's life, and you actually get to do something about it." Mm-hmm. Like, she's like, "I'm a social worker. At the most, I can keep the kids safe. That's the best I can do." And she goes, "I get to write an affidavit about it. And maybe a few weeks from now in court, I can testify on it. Maybe." She goes, "You get to go. You get to help me keep the kids safe. Mm-hmm. You get to go find the bad guy, the perpetrator. Yep. You get to go kick in the door. You get to go, hold them, accountable, and then write a good report, and then do the court." And she's like, "You get to do all of the things in law enforcement." And she's like, "I get to do a fraction of it." And she goes, "What I wouldn't give to have that." And I think we take for granted sometimes in law enforcement that we do have the ability to literally save people's lives, change people's worlds, and they're our customer by giving them great customer service, taking great care of them, and just loving them as people, regardless of their circumstance.
Yeah, it's perspective, right?
It is totally perspective.
Okay, so get this. When I was a fireman, a long time ago, there was a significant accident where a vehicle hit a pedestrian, okay? And we show up, and there's a big crowd of people. Everybody's pushing into the scene with cell phones, and this woman is gravely injured, right? And we keep telling people, step back, right? And we're trying to do work here, right? And finally, I lost my cool because there was an elderly woman and a young girl that pressed all the way into the scene and wouldn't listen to people. And I'm like, that's it. So I used my big boy voice and said, "Get on the sidewalk." And this elderly lady looks at me, and she points at my patient, and then she points at the little girl, and she goes, "That's her mama."
Oh,
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
different perspective.
Absolutely, because you go from being impatient and pissed to like, get the hell out of my scene, to, okay, what did I just say?
Yeah.
Just to dovetail that right back into what Christy was saying. As law enforcement officers, we have the opportunity. If you just take what the MDT feeds you, what the call screen is, it's going to be a long career.
Mobile data terminal.
Yep.
Everyone, the computer.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. If you just take the calls you're dispatched to and that's it, it's going to be rough. Okay. But if you take every opportunity that you can, in addition to do proactive policing, whether you're going to the farmer's market and walking around handing out stickers to kids, or if you're sitting outside of a trap house waiting for people to move and have a constitutional reason to interact with bad people that have dope on them, that are making a negative impact on your community.
Absolutely.
If you do all that stuff in between the stuff that you get off the MDT, the 10 hours and 40 minutes is gone.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. And the other thing too, change your perspective. Start thinking about the big picture. You're here to protect this community, and you're here to do God's work.
Yeah, for sure.
You're not working for the man. You're working for him.
Right. And
you're impacting people's lives every day. And if you take a perspective like that, oh man, it's impactful. And it's funny because we have to hire in law enforcement and in firefighting, we have to hire young people. We do. We need the young, strong backs, right?
Strong backs and weak minds.
We do. We need that. We need to, but
size 52 chest and a size 2 hat.
Exactly. but like, when you get to be our age, what I wouldn't give, to go back and have the wisdom that I have now. And that's one of the things that I'm very envious about your career in law enforcement, was you vetted out all of that young aggression. You still have some of it because you're excited about your career, your new career, right? So you still got some, but you vetted out a lot of that when you were in the fire service. And so now in your law enforcement service, I watch you and I can see you're just like every day you're like, okay, no. You know, this is you're taking the old bull perspective on a lot of things, which I think is super smart.
Yeah, it's taken some time. And talk to the people on my team before you give me too much praise. But it's but it's I have learned so much from the people that I work with. But yeah, I guess one of the things that you bring to the table when you've already done 20 years in public service or in public safety is, you know, shoot, the ability to talk to people that are in crisis. Man, it is so important to be able to figure out how to talk to people that are in crisis. And people that already know how to do that are such a step ahead.
Well, the chaplain thing for you is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at that, just that one little piece.
Yeah, no. And no, I was when I talked to Chief Bowen, when he talked to me about it, I'm like, yeah, I'm not ordained. He's like, well, you got to be ordained. And so it took me about a year to get ordained. And because I didn't do the Cracker Jack box one where you can get online and find somebody to call you ordained. I actually, you know, I did whatever work was involved in the program I was in.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
Yeah, got ordained and then circled back to him and said, hey, I'm ordained. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, no, I did it. And I said, but you got to understand, if you take me on as a volunteer chaplain, what you're getting. I said, you know me, the guys know me, but I said, you're not getting a religious guy. You're getting a guy with a bunch of flaws that swears all the time and probably drinks too much. But I have a real heart for the people of this community and the people that work for you. And he's like, no, he said, that's what I need. And so being able to volunteer in that capacity, I mean,
absolutely.
It was fantastic being able to, I mean, I had no idea what I was getting into when I did that. And it was, I learned a lot.
And I'll tell you what, Dave Bowen is a great man.
No, for sure.
And Dave Bowen, if he picks you for something, it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, I was honored to get to know him and get an opportunity to do anything with him.
One of the greatest men I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Really good dude. So
you ought to have him on.
I'm gonna have him on for sure. Yeah. Hey, listen, we haven't even talked about your riding career. We haven't even talked about your backcountry trips. I got a great photo of you with a shotgun going up a river in the Bob. It's great stuff. We need to have you on for a part 2.
All right,
Sound good?
Let's do it.
All right. So, hey, man, thanks. I really appreciate you. I think everybody's going to love this. This is a great story. And thanks for all you do for our
Thanks
community.
for having me on, Sheriff.
Yeah, God
appreciate
bless you,
it.
Take care. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Pursuit Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Slaughter. So, podcast is taking off. Everybody's watching it. I'm getting tons of emails. I'm getting tons of social media responses back and forth. And a lot of people want to know, how do we support this podcast? How do we get more content? How do we make sure that what drives this podcast? It's super simple. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Those algorithms help us out a lot and help us get feedback on what we got going on. Comment. The comment section should be totally out of control. It should be something that, we're just, it should be uncontrollable. The other thing is steal our material. Take our material, monetize it, make it your own. Do whatever you want. I don't care. Just tag us in it, give us credit, and we love it. We love it. We want you to see all this material, take all this material, use it for whatever you want. It's the internet. Hey, this is America. It's all supposed to be free for that, right? The other thing you can do also, if you own a small business or you just have word you want to get out, call us for advertising. As you'll hear on this podcast, you'll hear advertisers on there. We have advertising as well, and that really helps drive our podcast as well. And remember that every dollar from this podcast goes to support the Sheriff's Legacy Foundation, a local charity, a 501c3. Thank you, everybody, and God bless.